40 years after anti-apartheid activist Dr Neil Aggett died in police custody, a reopened inquest into his death has found that it was not a suicide, as Judge Motsamai Makume found that apartheid security police were responsible for his death. Dr Aggett was found hanging in his cell at John Vorster Square police station in 1982 after being detained for 70 days. Joining us now for reaction is author and Ahmed Timol's nephew, Imtiaz Cajee. Imtiaz, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to The Full View. What's your reaction to the ruling? Do you believe that it's a step closer to finding justice for Dr Aggett's family?
Good evening, Simpiwe. No, most certainly. It's a very, very significant day. It's an emotional day. You know, for 4 decades, the Aggett family had to confront the lie of the apartheid regime that their loved one had committed suicide. And we've heard today by Judge Makume that it was very, very clear that he was killed in police detention. They've disgraced the integrity of Dr. Neil Aggett by saying that he was rather prepared to have committed suicide than betraying his comrades. And this is similar to exactly what transpired in the Timol inquest judgment in 2017, Simpiwe. So very, very significant day, but we still await a very, very treacherous path ahead. And this is purely based on my own experiences that transpired since the historic Timol judgment in October 2017. And what transpired was that the apartheid-era perpetrators, João Rodrigues, Neville Elst, and Seth Sons, have till to date not had their day in court. As for Rodrigues, he had 19 court appearances. His matter was heard at the full bench of the South Gauteng High Court, as well as the SCA in Bloemfontein, and he passed away without his matter being heard at the Constitutional Court, the apex court in this country. And the question must be asked, why did it take the judiciary so long to deal with the matter of João Rodrigues? And we have to ask the question, why is it selectively for certain individuals in the country, like President Jacob Zuma, that his matters, once they go through the court processes, they are fast-tracked? But in this particular instance, the murder of Ahmed Timol represents apartheid-era families throughout the country. And we urgently waited for this matter to be heard at the highest court. And the judiciary, in my view, simply failed us by not having Rodrigues to have his day in court at the apex court in the country. If we look at the issue simply of Neville Elst and Seth Sons, 4 years after they were cases or dockets were opened against them, only in January this year have they made representation to the NPA as to why they must not be charged. And they are 87 and 85 years old, respectively. And one must ask the conduct about this National Prosecuting Authority. It was the same National Prosecuting Authority that was from 2003 sitting with the matter of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigations. It was the full bench of the South Gauteng High Court, Simpiwe, in May 2019 that instructed the NDPP Shamila Batoy to investigate the conduct of their senior prosecutors, Chris McAdam and Tory Pretorius, who only in 2019 spoke about political interference. And to date, there's absolutely no evidence of the NDPP taking any action against Chris McAdam or Tory Pretorius. In fact, it was the same Chris McAdam who after the SCA judgment was interviewed representing the NPA on the same SABC platform. So yes, we welcome the verdict today, a massive victory for all our families, including the Aggetts throughout the country. We don't forget, Simpiwe, that the likes of George Bezos have not witnessed this particular day. The parents of Neil Aggett are not here to see that their son did not commit suicide. So did Security Branch Operative Paul Erasmus, who confronted his apartheid-era colleagues, and he exposed the atrocities they had committed, as well as the lead investigator for the Aggett family, Frank Dutton. So we sit with this precarious situation. We celebrate the reversing of the 1982 inquest finding. But the question is, what is the NPA going to do now to ensure that those complicit in the killing of Dr. Neil Aggett are held accountable?
Yeah, it certainly leads to my next question. I mean, the length of time, 40 years is a very, very long time, but even if that's the case, it certainly cannot heal the wounds caused by Dr. Aggett's passing. So what do you propose should happen now? Because, in terms of the Aggett family finding justice and finding closure as a result of this particular ruling, and do consider and do bear in mind that some of the perpetrators or the officers responsible might not be alive today.
Well, the onus is on the NPA, Simpiwe. They've got to fast-track the investigations against those that were complicit in the killing of Neil Aggett, like they failed to do so in the matter of Neville Elst and Seth Sons in the Timor matter. And it is only then where we will get the absolute truth of what transpired. Because the painful reality, Simpiwe, is that apartheid-era perpetrators continuously are not prepared to come forward and make full disclosures. Under oath, they've testified at the reopening of the Aggett inquest, and they've perjured themselves. This was a clear finding of Judge Makume. So we are continuously told that we must look forward, we must look at nation building, we must look at reconciliation. Forget the past, we are told. And it is this past, in my view, that is currently haunting our beloved South Africa. The unresolved issues of the past. And the question must be asked, who is the NPA representing? Do they represent apartheid-era perpetrators, or do they represent the families who've lost loved ones during the apartheid era? And what sort of institutional reform has taken place at the NPA? Because for me, it's unacceptable that we find apartheid-era prosecutors who are leading and running investigations for the TRC. How does one explain this under a democratically elected ANC government, where perpetrators are tasked to investigate the crimes committed by their own former colleagues? It's simply unacceptable. And the reality is that families such as Matthew's Mabelani, whose father and his brother have already passed on, and yet they approached the NPA in 2017 for their matter to be heard. The family of Nicodemus Khawati. Tate Ben Khawati was interviewed by the Hawks in 2018. To date, there's no update on that particular matter. The same with the Ashley Creel matter. They were informed around 2015 that the Hawks were looking into the death of Ashley Creel. Today, there's absolutely no progress on this matter. So how many more families are going to continue passing, members of families are going to continue passing on?
All right. I suppose then that the ball is now on the court of the National Prosecuting Authority, to institute, to investigate a charge of murder. Thank you so much for joining us, Imtiaz.
My pleasure.
Imtiaz Cajee there is anti-apartheid activist and Ahmed Timol's nephew, and he's been commenting on the High Court judge which ruled that Dr Neil Aggett's death was not a suicide, but the apartheid security officials were responsible for his death.